Building a city on Mars. It sounds like pure science fiction, doesn't it? A desolate red planet with no breathable air, no liquid water on the surface, and temperatures colder than Antarctica. Yet, one man is convinced that humanity's future depends on living there. That man is Elon Musk, and for SpaceX, he has a plan so bold it almost defies belief. Not just to visit Mars, not just to plant a flag, not to build a completely self-sustaining city on the red planet. So the big question is, how would we actually survive there? Is this grand vision realistic, or is it just an impossible dream? Elon Musk has said it very clearly. Humanity must become a multi-planet species. In his view, Earth faces a long list of long-term risks. Think about it. Giant asteroid strike, catastrophic climate change, nuclear war, or some other unforeseen disaster we haven't even considered. Mars, he argues, is our best backup plan, our insurance policy. But why Mars? Of all the planets in our solar system, what makes it so special? Well, for a few key reasons. First, its day is 24.6 hours long, almost identical to Earth's, which would make adapting much easier. We know from geological evidence that Mars once had rivers, lakes, and maybe even oceans. It still has vast amounts of water, frozen as ice just beneath the surface and at its poles. And finally, it's relatively close enough to reach with technology we're developing right now. Mars isn't perfect by any means, but among all our options, it's the least impossible one. So, how do you start building a city on another planet? First things first, you need transportation. A way to get there. That's where Starship comes in. Starship is SpaceX's revolutionary, fully reusable rocket. When it's complete, it will be the most powerful rocket ever built by a huge margin. Musk's plan is breathtaking in its scale. He envisions launching a fleet of over 100 Starships, maybe even 1,000. Each one packed with people, essential machines, and tons of supplies. The journey itself will take between 6 and 9 months, depending on the planet's alignment. These launch windows only open up every 26 months, when Earth and Mars are at their closest points. The ultimate goal of all this is to drastically lower the cost of a ticket to Mars. Right now, it would cost billions. Musk wants to bring that price down to something closer to the price of a house on Earth. Because without affordable, reliable transport, the dream of a Mars city remains just that, a dream. Okay, let's say we get there. We've landed on Mars. Now we face the real challenge: survival. The Martian environment is incredibly hostile. It has almost no atmosphere to speak of, meaning no oxygen and no protection from the sun's harsh radiation. There are also planetary dust storms that can rage for weeks, plunging the surface into darkness. Humans simply cannot live on the surface unprotected. The solution: we have to go underground, or at least build our habitats and cover them with a thick layer of Martian soil, which is called regolith. Imagine large, pressurized dome structures with multiple sealed layers for redundancy. The first settlers would likely live in interconnected, pressurized modules, forming a network of tunnels and living spaces beneath the surface. This brings us to radiation, one of the biggest killers on Mars. The planet's surface is bombarded with hundreds of times more cosmic and solar radiation than we experience on Earth. Without heavy shielding from the soil above, the long-term health effects would be devastating. So, living underground isn't just a choice, it's a necessity for survival. A city, whether on Earth or Mars, cannot function without the basics: water, air, and food. So, where do we get them? For water, the answer lies just below our feet. Mars has enormous deposits of water ice. Fleets of autonomous robots will be tasked with drilling for this ice, melting it down, and then purify it for drinking and other uses. What about oxygen? We can actually make our own. There are two main methods. First, we can use a process called electrolysis to split the water we've collected into its components. hydrogen and oxygen. The other method is to extract oxygen directly from Mars's thin atmosphere, which is about 95% carbon dioxide. This isn't science fiction anymore. NASA's Perseverance rover carried an instrument called MOXIE that has already successfully tested this technology on Mars, proving that it's possible. And then there's food. Initially, the first settlers would rely on dehydrated and packaged food broth from Mars, but to be self-sustaining, they would need to grow their own. This means building massive, airtight greenhouses. Inside, they would use advanced techniques like hydroponics and aeroponics to grow crops without soil. They might also cultivate algae, which is incredibly efficient at producing nutrients and oxygen. On Mars, everything must be recycled. Absolutely nothing can be wasted. Every drop of water, every bit of air, every nutrient would be part of a closed-loop system. Now, let's talk about power. A Martian city would be incredibly energy-hungry. Mars doesn't have fossil fuels like oil or coal. So, all energy must be generated locally, but most obvious solution is solar. We need to build massive solar farms, sprawling fields of panels to capture sunlight. However, we have a problem. Those brutal Martian dust storms can block out the sun for weeks at a time. This would be catastrophic for a city entirely dependent on solar power. That's why backup energy systems are absolutely essential. The most likely candidate is nuclear power, probably for small, modular reactors. They can provide a steady, reliable source of energy regardless of the weather or time of day. Because on Mars, energy is life. Without power, you'll have no oxygen generation, no heating, no water recycling. You have no survival. The first people to go to Mars won't be tourists looking for a vacation. They'll be the pioneers, the builders of a new world. They will be engineers, doctors, scientists, construction workers, farmers, and technicians. Life for them will be unimaginably difficult. It will be extremely dangerous, incredibly isolated, and a tremendous mental and psychological challenge. Elon Musk himself is very blunt about this. He said on multiple occasions, a bunch of people will probably die in the beginning. Mars will not be comfortable. It will be a constant struggle for survival, not a life of luxury. And even with all this planning, some of the hardest and most profound problems remain unsolved. What are the long-term effects of living with constant, low-level radiation, even with shielding? What about human reproduction? Can we have healthy children in Mars's low gravity, which is only about 38% of Earth's? What are the psychological effects of being completely isolated from Earth, knowing you may be one of billions of miles away from all? How do you handle complex medical emergencies when the nearest hospital is on another planet? But the biggest question of all is this: can a city become truly self-sustaining? If for some reason, the supply ships from Earth stopped coming, could the city survive on its own? Could it manufacture its own spare parts, build its own new habitats, and solve every problem that arises using only local resources? That is the ultimate test. So, is a city on Mars possible? In theory, yes. The science and engineering principles are mostly understood, but is it easy? Absolutely not. It will be the single most difficult undertaking in human history. But then again, every great human achievement once sounded impossible. The idea of flying through the air, traveling to space, or walking on the moon were all once considered fantasies. Mars may not be humanity's simple escape hatch, but it could be our greatest experiment. An experiment not just about survival, but about who we become when we're faced with a completely new frontier. Who are we when Earth is no longer our only home? So I have a question for you. Knowing all the risks, knowing you may never return, would you go? Would you sign up to be one of the first settlers on Mars? Let me know what you think down in the comments. And if you enjoy thinking about science, space, and the future of humanity, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos like this. The universe is waiting. Thanks for watching.